What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Very excited to be back making content. Obviously, last year we got through the fantasy hockey season, had some pretty good takes, had some pretty bad takes as well. We ended up coming fourth in the Drafters NHL Best Ball Championship, so we made some nice profits, but we're gunning for that #1 spot this upcoming season. So very excited to start doing drafts and live streams for that. With that being said, you clicked on this video, you understand what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about the offseason. Lots of trades, signings, coaching changes, lots of things to discuss. Unfortunately, wasn't the best free agency class, but there's still a lot of fantasy implications that we need to talk about. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. You might as well start off with one of the players in the thumbnail, Nikolai Ehlers, who signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, initially when I heard this, I tweeted out saying, well, it's kind of a fantasy graveyard. We know with the Carolina Hurricanes, players struggle to produce as they would on other teams, just with the way that Rod Brind'Amour rolls the lines, sometimes the way that he rolls the power play units. So initially my thought was great. He's going to Carolina. We're never going to get, 17, 18 minutes Nikolai Ehlers. It's never going to happen. But as I thought about it more, I've realized that this is probably a better spot for him than his spot on the Winnipeg Jets. Now, last year in Winnipeg, he finally got put back on Power Play 1, which was great. Was very excited to see what he could do, and he had a pretty solid season. I mean, 63 points in 69 games, 22 power play points, but his ice time was still pretty low at 15 minutes and 48 seconds of ice time per game. And it's just funny because the season prior, when he wasn't on PP1, he actually averaged more ice time per game with 15 minutes and 52 seconds. So not an ideal situation to be in, not getting enough even strength ice time. And I'm not saying he's going to get that in Carolina, but what I think is going to happen is he's going to be on line 1 with Aho, power play 1, and line mates of Aho and Jarvis. That's much better than Nemestikov and Cole Perfetti. That top line of Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Gabriel Velarde was not going to change. That was pretty much set in stone. So on Carolina, he now has the opportunity to play with all-star level players on a really good team and potentially elevate this power play as well. Yeah, I think this is actually a good move for Ehlers in terms of his fantasy value. He has definitely gained value, and I think he probably is going to be a steal in your upcoming drafts. Next up, let's talk about Mitch Marner of the Vegas Golden Knights. I know it sounds very weird to say that. No longer on the Toronto Maple Leafs, an end of an era, and this certainly has a lot of implications for fantasy. Obviously, with Toronto, we could talk about the fact that this might hurt Austin Matthews. That's something I'll talk about in a little bit. I don't think it will too much, but it has implications for the Maple Leafs power play, and it certainly has implications for the Vegas power play as well. We will discuss that in a little bit, but just speaking on Mitch Marner's value alone, I would say I'm pretty neutral on him going to Vegas from Toronto. The reason I say this is that even though you're moving him away from the best goal scorer in the NHL and Austin Matthews, you are still putting him on a team where he has Jack Eichel, he has Mark Stone, Tomas Hertl, Pavel Dorofiev, the list goes on. They have a very solid top 6. And Jack Eichel is an elite player, similar to Austin Matthews. When I say similar to Austin Matthews, I don't mean in their play style, but in terms of the level of skill, Eichel is up there with the very best. Now, you could say that there is an issue with Eichel and Marner both being playmakers. Will they be put on the same line, even strength? I am not sure. I would hope to see that, but we don't know yet, right? We have to see what they do in training camp. I'm sure they're going to try it out. I'm sure they're going to mix it up. But yeah, in general, I think he's still going to be really solid in fantasy. Pretty similar numbers is what I'm expecting. So still a very solid pick that's probably going to go in the first 2 rounds. Before we talk about our next player, I want to quickly give a shout out to Drafters Fantasy Sports. This is a daily fantasy sports platform available in all of Canada, including Ontario and most US states. Right now, we don't have any NHL best ball drafts open or NHL pick'ems, but we do have the NFL. We have massive best ball contests for the NFL and also season-long futures as well. So if you want to get a 100% match deposit up to $100, 20 gets you 40, 40 gets you 80, 100 gets you 200. Sign up using promo code /referral code FIREDUP, and you get that match deposit. With that being said, let's talk about the next player. We'll keep going with the heavy hitters. Let's talk about Noah Dobson to the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, you guys have seen the thumbnail. You saw the stock down photo on Noah Dobson. And listen, before you get your pitchforks out, Montreal Canadiens fans are very passionate. I understand. I'm not saying that this is bad for him in a hockey sense, or it's bad for Montreal in a hockey sense. I'm strictly talking about fantasy hockey. He didn't gain any value in fantasy going to Montreal. At least on the Isles, there is maybe an opportunity that he could get back on power play 1 ahead of Tony DeAngelo. On Montreal, there's no opportunity for this. He's not taking Lane Hutson off power play 1, a guy that had one of the best rookie defenseman seasons we've seen in a very long time. So that's why I consider him a faller. He's still going to be solid in fantasy. Like, he could be a 40 to 50 point guy. He'll be solid, but he'll probably go higher than he should go in fantasy drafts. So something to keep in mind. Another big move that happened was JJ Peterka getting traded to the Utah Mammoth in exchange for Josh Stone and Michael Kesselring. Now, obviously, if you guys watch the channel, you know I was very high on JJ Peterka going into last season, and he didn't disappoint, right? He almost put up 70 points, had a very solid year playing alongside Tage Thompson, playing on the first power play unit, and a lot of people are thinking this is a very good move for him, that there's a chance that he could eclipse his point total from last year, and to be honest, I have my reservations. The reason I'm concerned is because, let's start off with even strength. Last year, he played on a line with Tage Thompson for majority of the season. Tage Thompson is like a 40-plus goal scorer. He's one of the best goal scorers in the NHL. I feel like that's been established at this point. And going to Utah, in my mind, they're going to be running a Keller, Cooley, Gunther first line. And then the second line is going to be Nick Schmaltz, Barrett Hayton, and JJ Peterka. You're getting a downgrade for even strength. And then we also have to talk about the power play, right? On Buffalo, he was power play 1 for pretty much the entire season. The Sabres power play wasn't great. He still put up 18 power play points. But guys, the Utah power play was great last year. In terms of the power play, it was Nick Schmaltz, Glenn Keller, Dylan Gunther, Mikhail Sergachev, and then a mix of Logan Cooley and Barrett Hayton. So you basically had these staples being Schmaltz, Keller, Gunther, and Sergachev, and then you had some mix-ups. Even Logan Cooley wasn't guaranteed power play 1 last year. It was Barrett Hayton for a good amount of time, and Logan Cooley is more offensively gifted than JJ Peterka. So that's one reason, and we just need to talk about the roles quickly, okay? Gunther is on the left side in Ovechkin's office. He is repping one-timers there. He is not moving from that spot. Keller's on the right side, Sergachev running the points, and then they had Schmaltz in the bumper. Now listen, say what you want about Nick Schmaltz. This guy's been elite on the power play. In 23-24, 10 power play goals, a total of 21 power play points, and last year, 9 power play goals and a total of 25 power play points. This guy's elite on the power play, and people think, oh, well, Peterka's just going to come in and take him off. I don't know, guys. Schmaltz is really good on the bumper, and he has proven success on this man advantage. And listen, I know it's easy to cherry pick stats, but Peterka hasn't been that good on the power play. 6 power play goals last year, 3 power play goals the year prior. I know last season was really the only year where he was power play 1, so I'm not going to knock on it too much, but, and the fact also that the Sabres don't have a good power play. So there is some excuses on that side of things, but Schmaltz has proved that he is successful on the power play, and Peterka has not done that yet. So ultimately, I don't think Schmaltz should be taken off power play 1. I see him as the only player that would get taken off power play 1 for Peterka, though. If you take Schmaltz off, who does take a good amount of faceoffs on the power play, and you want to keep Cooley on power play 1, then Cooley's the only guy that's going to be taking faceoffs on the man advantage. Cooley has not shown that he has the face-off skills yet. So you're running a dangerous game, running Peterka, Gunther, Keller, Cooley, Sergachev on power play 1. Don't think Cooley would be power play 2 and then Hayden power play 1 with Peterka. I just don't see that happening. So ultimately, it makes the most sense to keep the power play together with Cooley at front, and then basically you're going to have Cooley and Schmaltz taking the face-off duties, and then you're going to have Barrett Hayton being the face-off guy on power play 2. With all that being said, you have Peterka potentially with worse even strength line mates and on power play 2. And you want me to believe that he is going to surpass 68 points. I don't know, guys. We'll see what happens. There's always the potential for injuries where he could get an opportunity to play top line and power play 1. So that's a possibility. But yeah, I'm not going to be reaching for Peterka in my upcoming drafts. And the more I speak, the more I want to put him in the faller category. So we're just going to leave it at neutral and say temper your expectations with this acquisition. Those were some of the biggest moves. We still have a lot more to talk about. I'm going to talk about the rest of the moves a little more rapid fire. But 2 players I do want to talk about quickly here, 2 big players in fantasy, are Matthew Tkachuk and Roman Josi. Starting with Matthew Tkachuk, there are a lot of concerns with Tkachuk and his health, okay? He is set to get surgery, supposedly, and it was delayed because he was getting married. That was a report. There's some reports suggesting that he might be missing a good chunk of time, maybe until Christmas, but then there's also the Olympics. So I could see Matthew Tkachuk getting surgery, sitting out, and then potentially getting put on LTIR and then returning for the Olympics and then coming back. So yeah, this is a big concern. In certain drafts right now, he is going as like a top 30 pick, and guys, he might be out for a good chunk of the season. So please be careful in drafting Matthew Tkachuk. As we get more updates, I will give you guys the update on that and how to move forward with drafting him. Another player is Roman Josi. Now, he had a POTS diagnosis, bit of a heart issue, but supposedly he was progressing exceptionally well. That was what Barry Trotz said in a statement. So that is good news. They expect him to be ready for the 25-26 season. So it's not going to affect my drafting strategy too much. In fact, he might end up being a little bit more valuable in drafts than previous, because some people might hear this news and fade him. But yeah, something to keep an eye out for. If we get any more updates, that's something that we want to consider when drafting. Now I want to go through the rest of the risers here, starting with Lucas Dostal of the Anaheim Ducks. John Gibson was traded to the Red Wings, and it looks like it is now Lucas Dostal as the #1 starter. They traded for Mrazek. He was involved in that Gibson trade, and they also signed Ville Husso, but I wouldn't really be too worried about those two guys. Dostal is the guy. Ducks are set to improve. They're not a playoff team, but they're going to be a better team, new coaching. So this could be a guy that's going to get a lot of volume and surprise some people as well. Another player here is Zach Hyman. Nothing really new on the news front, but Corey Perry signed with the Los Angeles Kings. I guess there would have been some sort of concern maybe that Perry would still be power play 1, because Hyman lost power play 1 to Perry later on last season, but he's gone, so we don't got to worry about that. Another riser could be Morgan Riley / Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Rich Marner is gone. They ran a 5-forward power play last year, so now there is an open spot on that man advantage, and it's up for grabs. Could it be another forward? Maybe Bobby McMahon. I don't know. Maybe they trade for somebody. But as of now, I think the most likely scenario is either Morgan Riley or OEL running the point, because they need somebody to run the point. That's what Marner was doing. So these guys could be good values in your upcoming draft. Obviously, only one of them can benefit. Other players here, Cole Perfetti. With Nikolai Ehlers gone, there's an open spot on power play 1. Is it 100% going to be Cole Perfetti? No. I think he's the most likely candidate. We still have Jonathan Taves, who's sort of a question mark. We have Gustav Nyquist, I guess, Alex Iafallo, but I think it's Perfetti's spot to lose, and that means he's in a top 6 role on a good power play. So somebody who could see a potential breakout. Another player here, Tony DeAngelo of the New York Islanders. What changed is that Noah Dobson was traded to the Montreal Canadiens. So now there's really no contesting his power play 1 spot. So I expect Tony D to be running that power play 1, and he should still be very solid in fantasy. Another riser, I guess you could say, is Trevor Zegras of the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, Flyers are still a bottom of the barrel team. However, there is a good chance that Zegras is in the top 6 and on power play 1, getting power play time with Matvei Michkov, and just getting a fresh start on a new team, because clearly it didn't work out with Anaheim. A new opportunity to start fresh. He's still a young player. He's had multiple 60-plus point seasons, so we'll see what he can do. Another riser is Maxim Shabunov, signed with the Isles on a 1-year deal, coming from the KHL. Now, this is an interesting signing. Obviously, if you look at his numbers, they pop out and say, oh, wow, he actually had pretty good production in the KHL. He was over a point per game. He had 67 points in 65 games, more of a passer than a shooter, but that's really good numbers. He's 24 years old as well. He's young, but the big issue is that he is 5'8" and 156 pounds. So we'll have to see if his game translates to the NHL, because the KHL, it's very different. It's less physical. The ice is bigger. So yeah, we'll just have to see if he gets thrown around and if he can fit. But hey, maybe he'll surprise some people. He could maybe be a late round flyer in a deeper league. Next, we have John Klingberg, signed with the Sharks. He is likely going to be power play 1. And even though the Sharks are a crap team, that power play could be solid. You have Celebrini, you have Smith, you have Eklund, you have Toffoli, and Klingberg is going to help this power play as well. So could be a good option. Next up, we have Matthias Michelli, or, some people might call, Timu Mitch Marner. We have Mitch Marner at home. And listen, not trying to harp on Matthias Michelli. He had a very good year 2 years ago. Last year just wasn't ideal. He couldn't crack into the top 6, and he's not really a bottom 6 player. He doesn't have the physicality. He doesn't have the size. But on the Toronto Maple Leafs, he could be sort of a Marner-esque player to fit on that top line with Austin Matthews, He's a very good playmaker, so we'll see what happens. In fantasy, guys, he's going to get drafted higher than he should. I guarantee it. That happens with a lot of Leafs players just because of the way, drafting works and Leafs fans drafting. So I wouldn't be reaching for Maccelli. In fact, I would only draft him in a deeper league, especially it would have to be in a league that doesn't really count shots, hits, and blocks heavily because Maccelli's peripherals are atrocious. So that's something to keep in mind, but he could put up 40 to 60 points potentially. So he'll be relevant in some leagues. Another riser we got to talk about is John Gibson of the Detroit Red Wings. Now, you might argue that the Ducks and the Red Wings are more similar than some people might think in terms of the level of play for this upcoming season. They might be similar in the standings. However, I do think Gibson has gained some value. The Red Wings on paper should be better than the Ducks. They were better last year, and the only competition he has to worry about is Cam Talbot. Now, Talbot has been solid, but he's also 38 years old. Gibson is 32 years old. Gibson played pretty good last season, so there is a chance that Gibson is the #1 starter, getting good volume on a team that almost made the playoffs last year. So with all things considered, this is probably a good move for his fantasy value. Next, we have Isaac Howard, who got traded from Tampa to Edmonton. And with Isaac Howard, this is an interesting player because obviously you have the fact that the Oilers need some top 6 guys. They really do. So he has that spot open. He has that opportunity. And I'm assuming that's what he wanted, an opportunity to play in the top 6, to get top minutes. With him, I mean, he won the Hobey Baker Award last season. He had 52 points in 37 games with Michigan State. And this sort of came out of nowhere because his 2 previous college seasons weren't great. So I can't really tell you what's going to happen. There's no guarantee that he'll stay in the top 6 or that he's going to develop chemistry with McDavid or Draisaitl, but he is an interesting player that you might want to look at if you're in a deeper league in your later rounds. Next, we have Brandt Clarke. Now, obviously, there are still big question marks on whether he's going to be on Powerplay 1 because the Kings sort of transitioned to a 5-forward unit last year at the end. That remains to be seen, but the reason he's a riser is because Jordan Spence was traded to Ottawa, and that means that Clarke now has the opportunity to be in a top 4 role, even strength. So likely going to see a nice bump. The next riser is Yves Bouillon of the Minnesota Wild. Bouillon got Powerplay 1. I'm really struggling saying his last name. Bouillon. I think that's it. I'm going to try, guys. Let me know. But Bouillon was Powerplay 1 in the playoffs last year. I believe he played 4 games, put up 1 assist. Not the greatest showing, but this is a very talented prospect who has all of the offensive skills that you want. You want that guy running Powerplay 1. This Powerplay Minnesota gets a lot of ice time. It is a dedicated first unit with guys like Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Boldy, elite players. So if he holds on to that spot for the entire season, there is a chance he could put up 30, 40, maybe even 50 points as a ceiling. Some more risers include Victor Arvidsson. It's not the biggest riser because he is going to the Boston Bruins, who looked pretty bad going into this upcoming season, but there is a chance he's in the top 6. Maybe he'll get Powerplay 1, probably not, but I'd imagine he's getting more ice time on Boston, so there's that. You also have Jeff Skinner, another former Edmonton Oiler, another player where it didn't work out in Edmonton. On the Sharks, it's likely he's going to get more ice time, potentially in the top 6, which is good. I don't think he'll be Powerplay 1, but he'll probably get more ice time, so that is a bump for his fantasy value. We also have another KHL signing, Arseny Griciuk. He signed with the Devils. He's a good player. He has skill. Obviously, when you sign a player from the KHL, it's kind of a crapshoot sometimes. You don't know if their game is going to translate, but he is somebody to keep an eye out for. Don't think he's going to be on Powerplay 1. I know he's not going to be Powerplay 1, but there is a chance he could play on line 1 with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, and that would be so much better than Palat. I don't know why Palat is still on the top line. It's a disservice to Devils fans, guys, but we'll see what he can do. Next, we have Yaroslav Askarov of the San Jose Sharks, a young goaltender who has a lot of potential. He was drafted in the first round by Nashville, I believe. The reason he's riser is because Georgiev is no longer on the Sharks, so I think Askarov is going to get the majority of starts. Now, the Sharks do have Alex Nedeljkovic, so maybe it's a split, but in general, Askarov has gained some fantasy value. We have 2 more things to talk about in the riser section, one being that somebody is going to take Peterka's spot in Buffalo, not only line 1, even strength, but also Powerplay 1 as well, because Peterka was on that Powerplay 1 for the majority of the season, for the entire season, I believe. And in terms of who's going to take these spots, I cannot tell you with certainty. However, there are a couple of options. You have Yuri Kulik. He could potentially be Powerplay 1. We have Jack Quinn. We have Zach Benson. We have Josh Doan. We also have Alex Tuch, who wasn't Powerplay 1 at all last year. Only with the exception of time where people were injured. That was the only time that Tuck could crack power play 1. Makes absolutely no sense. Lindy Ruff, just, I don't know. I don't know why I thought Lindy Ruff was going to do anything good on Buffalo. But I'd like to see Tuck in that power play 1, taking Peterka's spot. And then somebody's going to be line 1. Maybe Zach Benson, maybe Josh Stone, maybe Jason Zucker. We will see. The last thing I want to talk about in the riser section is the Dallas Stars. Obviously, we have a new coaching change. Pete DeBoer is gone. And what DeBoer liked to do was roll the lines. He didn't really give heavy minutes to some of those top players, J-Rob, Rupe Hintz, etc. But with a coaching change and also the fact that Granlund is gone, Marchment is gone, obviously Logan Stankoven is gone, Mikko Rantanen is joined, but you lost some key guys. That Duchesne, Marchment, Sagan line was one of the best in the NHL last year. They had the ability to roll 3 lines, but now that they miss some of those guys, there's a chance they could be running heavier minutes for those top 6 players, guys like J-Rob, Hintz, Rantanen, Wyatt Johnson, even Duchesne. So maybe some of those guys get more even strength ice time, and that's going to help in fantasy. I want to go through a few more notable players that I guess I would say I'm neutral on. Mikko Granlund, I'm okay with it. He's going to the Ducks. They're not the greatest team. They're going to improve from last year. Ideally, he would be in a better situation somewhere else where he could guaranteed get top 6 time and power play 1 time. He is going to a team that is probably rolling 3 lines, probably splitting the power play units. So it's okay. We have Evander Kane, who is sort of in a similar role on the Canucks to the role that he had on the Oilers. I don't think he'll be power play 1. Maybe he will. He's not really a power play guy, but he'll be in the top 6. He's going to be taking shots. He's going to be taking hits. So I'm pretty neutral on it. We also have Jonathan Drouin. Yes, he's on a worse team. On Colorado, he was, early on, he was line 1 with McKinnon, power play 1. He sort of lost that and then was a line 3 player, and Drouin is not a line 3 player. So that's sort of why I'm neutral on him. He'll have more opportunity now on the Isles. Likely, I'm pretty sure they Patrick Waugh alluded to him playing with Bo Horvat, line 1, power play 1. So yeah, line 1, power play 1, he'll be solid. He'll put up bad peripherals, but pretty neutral on the change. Next up, I got to edit in a neutral player that I wasn't too sure about. I wasn't too sure where to put him on this list. And that player is Brad Marchand, who re-signed with the Florida Panthers. Now, this man got me single-handedly buying cookie dough blizzards multiple times in the summer. I couldn't help myself. So congrats on the advertisement. I hope you got paid for that. But listen, Marchand was great in the playoffs. 10 goals, 10 assists for a total of 20 points in 23 games. A plus 17, playing on the third line. That third line was insane. Lundell, Marchand, and Lissarainen. I expect them to keep that together. And that's why initially I thought Marchand's a faller in fantasy, because he'll probably be line 3, power play 2. But as I learned about this Matthew Tkachuk situation where there's a chance he might be sitting out until the winter, and then you have the Olympics going on, you know, there's a chance that Marchand's in the top 6 and maybe even power play 1 as well. But now if Tkachuk is healthy, then Marchand is likely going to be line 3, power play 2. Maybe he can crack line 2, and maybe Mackie Samoskevich could play line 3. But I think that chemistry that Marchand, Lundell, and Lissarainen had is pretty unmatched. I think they want to keep that line together. So on one hand, it's not ideal he's on the third line, but on the other hand, he has those opportunities with the Tkachuk injury, and he is on a really good team as well. So for that reason, I'm going to consider it neutral. We also have Pius Suter, going to have a very similar role on the Blues now. You know, he's going to be centering that second line, so that's why I'm neutral. Gustav Nyquist, now in the Jets, he's going to have a similar role. Riley Smith back on Vegas, similar role. JVR now on the Red Wings. Vladimir Tarasenko on Minnesota. Charlie Coyle on Columbus. These are guys that are going to have a similar role, so not big risers, not big fallers. That's why I have him in neutral. We also have some defensemen here. Keandre Miller, now in the Hurricanes. He didn't have the best year last year, so maybe a little bit of a bounce back, but I see him in a similar role. Decent amount of minutes. Good peripherals. You have Vladislav Gavrikov, not really a fantasy guy, but it is good for the Rangers. It helps that team quite a bit. And then we have Jeremy Lauzon, who is now on Vegas. Again, with fantasy, it's going to depend on your league, but he's a guy that puts up an insane amount of hits. We'll see if that changes, but he's going to be in a similar role. All right, so we talked about Noah Dobson already as a faller, but we really haven't talked about too many fallers here. So we do have some players I want to discuss, guys that I believe have lost fantasy value. So let's start off with Chris Kreider of the Anaheim Ducks. Now with Chris Kreider, listen, last year was so bad, so you could argue that it can't get worse, and I don't think it's going to be worse. I think he's going to play better, but in general, this is a worse situation to be in. The Ducks are probably running split power play units whereas the Rangers, they ran a dedicated power play 1. Now, in terms of even strength line mates, this is sort of debatable. I mean, last year, the Zibanejad, Kreider, Smith line just didn't work. Maybe you're dealing with better line mates here. It's hard to say what those line mates are going to look like, but we'll just have to see what type of lines they run in camp. I mean, you have Mason McTavish. If he doesn't get moved, you have Troy Terry. Maybe he could play with those two guys. Maybe Mikael Granlund. Maybe he'll play on the line with Ryan Strome, which isn't great. So we'll just have to see. But in my opinion, he's on a worse team. He's going to be on a worse power play. He's not going to get dedicated power play time. So yeah, I don't think that he gained fantasy value. You can argue that he lost fantasy value. Another player that I would say lost fantasy value. I mean, it's hard to say he lost fantasy value because the situation he is in is the same situation as he was last year. But if you're comparing it to where he could have gone, I would say this is a negative. And the player I'm talking about is Brock Nelson of the Colorado Avalanche. The reason I think he loses value is just because he could have went to a team where he would be on power play 1, and he will not get that opportunity on Colorado. It's out of the question. It's going to be Nichushkin or Lehkonen on power play 1. It's not going to be Nelson. So even though he's in the top 6, he's going to be surrounded by some good players on that line. Ultimately, his ceiling's going to be capped without that power play time. So for that reason, I consider him a faller. We also have Connor Bedard, who I would say, I mean, he's in sort of the same situation, but I put him in the faller section because the Blackhawks made no moves. I mean, they went out and made a big splash adding Andre Burakovsky, but that is pretty much it, okay? Burakovsky, what are we doing? I guess nobody wants to come to Chicago. They probably can't really convince guys to come to a situation where they know they're going to be rebuilding for a number of years. So with Connor Bedard, you're still with the same players. You have some young guys coming in that could progress. Frank Nazar, some of the defensemen. Sam Reinzel's a guy that you want to take a look at. But in general, this team is still hot garbage. And without players around Bedard, he is not going to be this insane fantasy player that we hope he can be in the future. Another faller is Mason Marchment. With Marchment, he was on a better team in Dallas. That Sagan, Duchesne, Marchment line was so good. And he's going to the Kraken where he's going to be getting similar ice time, but on a worse team. So he loses value. Another faller is Brent Burns. He's going to see less ice time on Colorado than Carolina. That's just a fact. And guys, he's what, 41 years old now? 40? I'd have to check, but he's getting up there in age. So don't expect too much from Brent Burns. Another faller is potentially Austin Matthews. Like I said earlier, I don't think he's going to lose too much value. Losing Mitch Marner, like he's still the best goal scorer in the entire league. But you can't sit here and tell me that replacing Mitch Marner with Matias Maccelli is an upgrade. Or it's the same. It's not the same. Mitch Marner put up 100 plus points last year. Maccelli put up like 20. I don't even know. Was it 15? It was not good. So it's not great for Austin. I can't say it helps Austin Matthews. You have to say it probably hurts a bit. So in general, he loses value. We also have two very important situations to talk about here when it comes to the man advantage. One of them being Carolina. Nikolai Ehlers signed with Carolina. I expect him to be on power play 1, probably in the slot, in the bumper. That's where he was on the Jets. That's where he really worked on being in the spot. And that means that somebody's getting taken off this first unit. In terms of who that is, it's either Jackson Blake or Andrei Svechnikov. So one of them is going to lose a lot of value. I hope it's not Jackson Blake, but who knows with Rod Brind'Amour. It'll probably be Svech on power play 2. We'll see, but one of them loses value, so that's something to talk about. And then the other power play situation to talk about, which is the most intriguing to me, is the Vegas Golden Knights power play. With Marner coming in, there's no question that he's going to be power play 1, but the question is, who is getting taken off? Because this isn't quite clear, right? You have 3 options, I would say. You have the first option, I believe, that I think is the best option is Mark Stone getting taken off power play 1. He doesn't need to be there. What you could do is move Hertl to the net front. You could put Marner in the bumper, Dorofeev on the right side, Jack Eichel on the left side, and Theodore running the point. That's what I think is the best option, but we have 2 other options as well. The other option, which many people think is going to happen, is Dorofeev gets taken off. You have Marner on the right side now, Eichel on the left side, Hertl in the bumper, Stone net front, Theodore running the point. This is okay, but like I said, I think Marner is better suited in the slot. Now you have 2 playmakers, Eichel and Marner, opposite of each other. I think Dorofeev is better on that right side. So, I mean, it could happen because Hertl's so good in that slot and they might want to keep him there. But yeah, that is one possibility. And then the other secret secret possibility that I think people aren't considering is a 5-forward power play. On the Leafs, they ran a 5-forward power play and Marner was running the points. You're seeing more teams do this where they're running 5 forwards as a unit, so maybe it's becoming more popular, but Marner is very capable at running the point. He can do that. He has the experience, and that could very well be what they do. Marner running the point, Eichel left side, Hurl, Bumper, Dorofiev right side, Stone net front. Now, this obviously would be a huge blow to Shea Theodore's value in fantasy. Any of these guys, if they lose power play 1, it's over. Maybe it wouldn't be necessarily over for a player like Mark Stone, but I mean, if Dorofiev lost power play 1, that is a massive blow. If Theodore lost power play 1, that is big, very negative for his fantasy value. And to be honest, I see no reason why Hurdle would get taken off power play 1. He had 16 power play goals last year. There's zero reason to do that. So it's either going to be Stone, Dorofiev, or Theodore. One of these guys is losing value, and it's something that you want to definitely pay attention to. Another player that I think lost fantasy value is Darcy Kemper of the Los Angeles Kings. And the reason I say this is because, well, the Kings' defensive core doesn't look too good right now. Losing Gavrikov, you got a lot of big question marks in this D core that could affect Darcy Kemper. We know how amazing he was last year. Down the stretch, he was incredible, and I don't think he's going to have the same season. The Kings have been known for being this stout defensive team, but I do have my concerns, so I might be avoiding him in my upcoming drafts, depending on his ADP. One extra player I want to talk about is Danila Yurov of the Minnesota Wild, drafted in the first round, 24th overall in the 2022 NHL entry draft. Coming over to the Wild this season, probably going to be centering the third line and on power play too, so he's not a player that I'm super excited for, but he is worth mentioning because 2 seasons ago, he had 49 points in 62 games for a 20-year-old. That is very impressive, so he has a lot of potential, but I don't expect him to break out this year. Maybe if Rossi gets traded and Yurov ends up centering that second line, he will have potential in fantasy, but for now, he is somebody that you just want to take a look at the waiver wire if something like that happens. Now, just quickly, some other notable free agency moves. Tavares stays with the Leafs on a really team-friendly deal. Sam Bennett and Ekblad stay put. Brock Besser resigns with the Canucks. Bowen Byram resigns with the Sabres. We have Andrei Kuzmenko staying with the Kings. He was a good fit there. We have Jonathan Taves returning, signing with Winnipeg. We have the Zach Bolduc and the Logan Mailloux trade. Not really worth talking about in fantasy. And like I mentioned, Michael Kesselring goes to the Sabres. He's going to get more minutes. Maybe you could put up some good peripherals as well. So in a deeper league, he could be worth a look. Another thing to discuss is notable restricted free agents that have not signed a contract yet. They've sort of been trickling in as the summer has gone along, but we have Mason McTavish, Luke Hughes, Marco Rossi, and Connor Zary still unsigned. I'm not really worried about Luke Hughes or Connor Zary, but Mason McTavish and Marco Rossi have both been in trade rumors. Don't know what's going to happen there. I'm assuming nothing will happen because that's typically how these things go, but when there's smoke, there's fire, so something to keep an eye out for. Next up, I quickly want to go over some coaching changes. These don't have the biggest impacts on fantasy generally, but they definitely can. For example, Dean Evison going to Columbus, transforming that team, some of those players getting more minutes, a dedicated power play 1. That's one example that comes to mind. Something that could be similar is maybe Joel Quenneville joining the Ducks. We have Greg Cronin out, who arguably wasn't the best coach, but Quenneville, he has the experience, and he's going to bring something new to this team. Hopefully, they can get this power play going, because last year, it was like 11%. It was absolutely terrible, so maybe the power play improves. Maybe a dedicated first unit, probably not. It's probably going to be split units, but we'll see who he prefers to give top heavy minutes to. Maybe some of these guys get favored, Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlson, etc. And maybe we could see a sort of Columbus situation happen where that team gets elevated. For the rest, nothing really stands out to me. I mentioned the Stars earlier and how that could change. The Rangers, Mike Sullivan coming in. Hopefully the Rangers can turn it around. I expect them to turn it around. We also have Rick Tocchet joining the Flyers. Now, Rick Tocchet maybe isn't the best coach for fantasy, but anyone is an upgrade over John Tortorella. Hopefully some Flyers players could break out potentially under Tocchet. With the Penguins, it's not really going to matter too much. They're a bottom of the barrel team. The Kraken, I expect them to run the same sort of strategy when it comes to rolling the lines and distributing the ice time, split power play units, but who knows? Maybe that can change under Lane Lambert. And with the Canucks, Adam Foote, we'll see what he can do. I also want to mention that Jim Montgomery, we're going to have a full season of him coaching the Blues. When he joined the team, the Blues went on an unbelievable run. They almost beat the Winnipeg Jets, the President's Trophy team last year. So the Blues are definitely a team that are going to surprise some people this year. We also have Tom McClellan, who is going to be coaching the Red Wings for the entire season. He's a pretty solid coach, so maybe he could bring the Red Wings to the playoffs. Probably not, but you never know. Lastly, I want to mention some players who are in trade rumors. You never know what's going to happen with these trade rumors, but there's certainly some interesting players that could be moved, that could have massive impacts on fantasy, and these are some of these guys. You have Jordan Kyrou, who is rumored to be linked to Montreal, but that seems to have died down. You have Erik Karlsson, who wants to win. He doesn't want to be stuck on Pittsburgh. You have Rickard Rakell. He might get moved middle of the season to a contender. You never know. You have Mike Matheson, who's been in trade rumors for the past year or so. Tristan Jarry has been in trade rumors. Igor Chinikov supposedly requested a trade, citing disagreements with Coach Dean Evason. Don't know if he will get traded. I think he has potential, but I don't think he's going to crack power play one, so that's the big thing holding him back. You also have Dougie Hamilton, who's been in some trade rumors. You have the big question of who's going to be power play one this year, Hamilton or Luke Hughes. They want to maybe give more ice time to Simon Nemec, so that's something that they have to deal with and figure out. And you also have Nazem Kadri, who had a fantastic season last year. Calgary is still not a playoff team, and a contender might want to add Kadri to make a run to make the Stanley Cup. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.